morning, and welcome to Frankly Speaking here on WYDC TV Big Fox. I am your host, Frank Acom, and we are broadcasting live from the Hesselson studio, and we have an exciting show in store for you today. We're going to be talking with Lori DiNardo. She is the mayor of Watkins Glen, but also she's in charge of the 2024 Watkins Glen Waterfront Festival, which, as you are well aware, one of the highlights of the event, not the only part of the event, but the highlight of the event, the Cardboard Boat Regatta. So we're going to find out about this year and what to expect. If you are interested, the event is tomorrow, and it runs 11 a.m. till 7 p.m. with the Cardboard Boat Regatta kicking off at 2. And I will tell you a little bit later on when we will be broadcasting the Cardboard Boat Regatta. That's a tradition here on Big Fox. We look forward to it every year. I will be hosting along with my fellow host, Elisa Trosha, and we'll have a lot of fun as we do every year. So I'll let you know when that is to broadcast. It airs quite a few times, so you have plenty of opportunities to catch it. Now, today is former President Donald J. Trump's 78th birthday, and we're going to talk about that a little later on because I started seeing article after article as I was doing show prep this morning talking about his birthday. And I said, well, when he was president, it's not as if they wished him a happy birthday. So why are there so many articles? Oh, then it hit me. Now a president's age is an issue. After 3.5 years, now we have to be concerned about the age of a potential president. It's very interesting to see how we are supposed to deny what we've seen the last 3.5 years and now focus on a candidate's age. So we will be talking about that in just a little bit. Did you see, I don't think we've really talked about this much, maybe when it first kind of all went down, for lack of a better word, but President Biden's, I don't know if you want to say former dog, Commander, and it actually became a joke, but it was not really a joke. It's a very serious issue of him attacking Secret Service agents. And it was in the news for a while, and some comedians, more conservative comedians obviously, had some fun with it. But it was always denied that Biden knew anything really about it or how many attacks there actually were. We're now learning that President Biden really had a front row seat to all of this. That's according to a new report. It got so bad that the one personnel member, one Secret Service member, actually asked, could we use a muzzle? Please, can we start using a muzzle? Now, this was obtained by Judicial Watch with a Freedom of Information Act request. And it sets the scene, which includes trips to the ER and the Taylor. Multiple Secret Service personnel shared that the attacks happened as Biden was walking the dog, with the president witnessing the incidents firsthand. And it's interesting because he's in this report, some of the things he said is redacted. So you're almost curious, what was he saying to stop the attack? Was he trying to stop the attack? TMZ, this is in one of the emails from the staff. TMZ just reported a dog bite at the White House. Can we please find a way to get this dog muzzled? One personnel member said. Again, a lot of this redacted. Another email said, as I started to walk towards him to see if he needed help, meaning President Biden, because President Biden had said something as he was leaving for this walk, Commander ran through his legs and bit my left arm through the front of my jacket. I pulled my arm away and yelled, no. The president also yelled, redacted, to Commander. I wonder what would be redacted, why that is a national security issue. Was Commander that bad that it would be a national security issue? That we don't know what the president would yell to Commander to hopefully get him to stop? President then redacted, I obliged, and Commander let me pet him. So apparently the president yelled something that needed to be redacted, and then he did something that needed to be redacted, and at that point, Commander was allowed to be pet. Yeah. When turning to close the door, Commander jumped again, oh, I'm not done, and bit my left arm for the second time. The president again yelled at Commander and attached the leash to him. So this whole time, even though we know this was a dog prone to violence, there was no leash involved. My suit coat has 3 holes, one being all the way through. No skin was broken. Other correspondents issued a stern warning in an email. There was a dog bite and the officer may need to go to the hospital. In other email correspondence, the Chief of Communications for the United States Secret Service wrote, yesterday around 8 p.m., a Secret Service uniformed division police officer came in contact with a first family pet and was bitten. The officer was treated by medical personnel on complex, and I am not aware of any hospitalization. On September 26, 2023, a series of media outlets reached out to the communications director of the Secret Service to confirm reports of an additional bite on a female officer. The latest information on Commander's biting habits came after the previous report that the German Shepherd bit and attacked at least, get this, 24 personnel members of the Secret Service between October of 2022 and July of 2023. That's a lot of attacks in a very short period of time. The incidents began to stack up with family pet altercations. I like that term, family pet, taking place in locations such as the White House in Delaware, Camp David, and Biden's beach house in Delaware. Anyway, listen, the commander eventually left the White House to live with other family members after this series of attacks. What family member are you that angry with? That you are... I just want to know about the redacted. I don't even know if this is much of a story, especially not the story to start the program with. I just want to know what the president yelled to the dog, Commander, and then what he did, because both of those things are redacted. What level of national security are we not familiar with where what the president said needed to be redacted? Unless maybe, do they redact cuss words? But no, because then it said he did something that was redacted. Just something to pique your interest with this morning. Hey, I can't start off with hot dog eating contest information every morning. We have a few things here this morning, not a lot, but about New York State issues. That's a double wave there. We have a few things here about the campaign itself. Trump returning. If you tune into other news outlets, this would be the headline. This is not the headline you're going to get on Frankly Speaking, but this would be the headline on other news outlets. Former President Trump returns to Washington for the first time since the January 6th insurrection. That has been really everywhere this morning and yesterday. Oh, here's a comment from a viewer. Good point. Biden either kicked the dog or the Secret Service guy. Maybe that's why they redacted him. Maybe it was more for the optics. It did not make him. Do you think he got confused and said sick him instead of saying stop? It was redacted. I don't know. There's a lot of questions. The redacted part is what piqued my interest this morning. And as I mentioned, it is former President Trump's 78th birthday. And we're going to tell you how the media is handling that scenario. Also, what they said about yesterday's closed-door meetings, because there's always a leak, right? The closed-door meetings with House Republicans and Senate Republicans yesterday. The big story, the big takeaway is that he met with Mitch McConnell for the first time since Mitch McConnell, I guess, for lack of a better word, insulted him or was critical of him. Maybe that's the term. Also, on top of it being the former president's 78th birthday and how the media is covering that, we have the Veep race, the vice presidential race. Now, what's interesting about this, I talked to you about it yesterday, where you're starting to see what would you call it, the campaigns for vice president, because we had that piece from the New York Post that was suggesting Tim Scott's not there, he doesn't got it, all coming from anonymous sources. Today, that was from the New York Post. Today, from CNN, they're saying J.D. Vance, one time, or I don't know if it was one time, a few times, reshared or liked tweets critical of then President Trump. So what's happening here is kind of the checkers game or the chess game or the horse race or whatever you want to call it behind the scenes, where, and I'm not going to use any names, but let's say potential VP number one releases to an outlet, hey, did you know this about potential VP candidate number two? It's kind of, the politics of things are kind of fascinating to watch. So we'll tell you about that as well. We're just getting started. That's setting the scene. As I said, Lori DiNardo is going to join us in the next hour. In full disclosure, we recorded that interview yesterday. And I say full disclosure because you'll know instantly for a few reasons. There are so many people on the street behind her. And you know that's not normally the case at 7 o'clock in the morning. So there you go. We have started the program. We have set the scene. Let's take our first break. Keep those comments coming in. Keep those waves coming in. And thanks for joining us on this beautiful Friday morning. We'll be right back with Frankly Speaking. Broadcasting live from the Hesselson studio, I am your host, Frank Acom, and this is Frankly Speaking. I'm so glad that you joined us this morning. Let's talk. I know I've stressed the importance of what of these protests, these anti-Israel, anti-American protests, and I've brought it up extensively, and it's only continued to grow, which was the original warning of what we discussed. And the reason I stressed the protest because the media was presenting it as pro-Palestinian. We said, well, no, it's anti-Israel, it's anti-American, and it's anti-police. And this yet again proves it. And again, we've seen all week how radical this has become with the unfurling of the banner that read "Long Live October 7th" in front of a memorial for the victims of October 7th. You had people flying Hamas flags. Well, where was this? It's in New York City. I guess the exact location doesn't. Oh, no, it was at the Israeli consulate. That's right. There are videos of a masked, we're going to get to that in a moment, masked anti-Israel protester igniting a pair of American flags and an Israeli flag outside the Jewish state's consulate on Wednesday. The American flags were nearly invisible beneath the flames as the firebugs, one of whom has racked up several arrests in the last 2 months, stood outside the building at 2nd Avenue and East 42nd Street. One was wearing a Gaza shirt, held a burning American flag as he stood in the bike lane directly in front of an NYPD booth. Another disguised man igniting an Israeli flag that immediately wilted and fell from the flagpole is what the video shows. Now, we're going to talk about, and I've got to say, we were ahead of the curve on this program about the masks. I really, truly believe that. The calling it for what it is, the modus operandi, the MO of terrorist organizations. Well, 3 of these firebugs were arrested, according to the NYPD. I'm not going to try to pronounce her name. Why not? Jackie Logson McCrae, who's 20, of New Jersey, was charged with second-degree reckless endangerment, third-degree menacing, disorderly conduct, and failure to use a sidewalk. Hey, get him for everything you can. I think the failure to use a sidewalk may be the only one that sticks with the bail reform laws. Maybe they can actually keep him in jail with that one. It's not clear whether he was one of the 2 men holding an American flag or was the one holding the Israeli flag. The arrest marks the 4th for Logden McCrae in recent weeks. He racked up criminal trespassing and resisting arrest charges in May, according to the NYPD. The identity of the other flag burners is still a mystery. Now, I will say there are some. Continuing. The shocking display came as other vandals splashed red paint across Manhattan Wednesday, including at a Palestinian mission and a luxury Upper East Side building. They also chucked the blood red paint across an NYPD cruiser, again, proving our point. Anti-Israel, anti-American, anti-police. So now Governor Hochul is allegedly, I say that because she's a political person. She's mulling over. She's thinking about a mask ban. Now, this is going to be interesting because obviously we have politicians that were pushing the wearing of masks during COVID. So how will she take away that mask option for people who, you see them still on the street, there's no knocking it, people who still wear masks. So how will she keep everyone appeased in this scenario? Governor Hochul is mulling a partial mask ban for New York City subways as anti-Semitic hate by mass protesters goes off the rails. So if this just focuses on subways, maybe there's something there. But I would argue, and let me first disclaimer, I'm totally against these masks. We know what they're wearing them for. But I would say the subway, for someone that really wanted to wear a mask because of concern over health issues, the subway is probably where I would be wearing a mask. And the subways are not the only place these protests are happening. There was that very terrifying instance of it earlier this week where they wanted Jewish people or Jewish supporters to raise their hands in that scary intimidation tactic. So that's what this stems from. The governor said Thursday she's working with lawmakers after Jewish leaders called to reinstate an anti-masking law that was repealed as the COVID-19 pandemic struck. The talks are largely, but not entirely, focused on the subway, Hochul said. It's time for a reset. There obviously is a problem here. This will be dealt with. Now, this about-face on masks comes after what Hochul called vile and disgusting recent anti-Jewish incidents in New York City, especially in which mass protesters demanded that, quote, Zionists raise their hands on a crowded train. Hochul said any mask policy would include reasonable carve-outs for health concerns, cultural events, religious reasons, and Halloween. She drew a distinction between wearing an N95 mask for health reasons and donning a full face covering to hide one's identity. Well, how will they, I'm just playing devil's advocate here, how will they differentiate? So if you're an anti-Israel protester and you're going to cause trouble and you're going to intimidate Jewish people and Jewish supporters, don't wear the mask that, maybe has some type of symbol on it for Hamas. Wear an N95 and say, yes, I was involved in these protests, but you can't get me for the mask law because I was concerned about my health. It just seems like a way to get lawyers kind of an easy out on this. Banning masks at protests entirely carried freedom of speech complications. What? But she said protesters' criminal and threatening behavior is a different ballgame. You certainly have to say there are major exemptions. The governor didn't lay out a timeline. That's why I don't have a lot of faith in this happening. And the reason I say that is, if there's not a timeline, right now it is very much in people's minds. The media's covering it because we all think of what would have happened if we were in that subway and how intimidating that is, how threatening that is, how just the threats of violence. The terrorist, the actions of terrorists. So right now it's really focused on in the news. But when it starts to fade from the news, is that when she'll kind of ignore it and let it go away. There's no reason why those conversations can't start now, she said. We'll have a strategy and then determine the right time to address it. The push also appears to have Mayor Eric Adams in support of this mask ban. This is important to the mayor, a source close to Adams said. The administration is reaching out to the parties across the city and state, elected officials in the council, the legislature, and the governor's office to figure out a way to get this done. He actually said to a radio host, cowards hide their faces. Dr. Martin Luther King did not hide his face. I agree with those who are calling for a removal of the ban, not only for the protesters who are using vile language, but also for criminal behavior. Now is the time to go back to the way we were pre-COVID, where you should not be able to wear masks at protests. Now, many have likened it, ourselves, myself included, with the Ku Klux Klan. And that's why that rule was originally on the books. I'm going to give you one opinion piece on this. We don't have a lot on this specific issue this morning, but it tied in with something, almost an update on what we've been talking about frequently on this program and extensively, and I think we've done a good job of it. Michael Feely, 62, a retired city dweller, said he opposed reinstating a ban. I think people are free to wear what they want to wear. Others worried about unintended consequences for sick New Yorkers who need to wear masks in public. I think, and my theory on this is, if you're wearing a mask and you're sitting on the subway, I don't believe, you'd like to think the NYPD is not going to go over and say, okay, you're under arrest. Now, if you stand up and say, who here is Jewish, or if you're at a protest that's painting Hamas symbols on a building, you may be wearing the mask for non-health related issues. A big thing people are missing is that any act of criminalizing masks in any context, even if technically some kind of health exemption is included, further stigmatizes and scares people away from wearing masks and makes our job in public health even more difficult, said a Columbia University science communicator. So now we're not supposed to stigmatize masks, even if it's by violent anti-Israel protesters. State Assemblyman Mike Riley said he was glad to hear the governor may be supportive of re-implementing this law. It doesn't make sense that we removed it, he said. I just hope that we move forward with this and restore this law that will actually provide a balance between freedom of speech and public safety. I'd love to hear what your thoughts on that are. The New York Post editorial board has a piece on that. We've got two updates on that, two quick updates on this issue, and then we will change the topic and move. We got a few things about Hunter. Again, it's Trump's 78th birthday, and now the media, after 3.5 years, finally reporting on the fact we should focus on age of a candidate. Not both candidates, of one candidate. We'll talk about that when we come back. Stay with us. This is Frankly Speaking here on WYDC TV, Big Fox. And we are back with Frankly Speaking here on WYDC TV, Big Fox. So the New York Post editorial board, to the point I was making, says you have to ban mask wearing now. Not dawdle, not drag your feet while these anti-Semitic goons run wild. And State Attorney General Tish James seems to take up a lot of issues, and she actually led the drive to repeal the state's longtime mask ban during COVID, should be leading the charge. Even though goonish masking has become routine at quote-unquote pro-Palestinian protests, as it's turned into a fashion statement because of what they wear, what kind of masks they wear, but it's identity concealment, imitating the Antifa veterans who've rushed to join this latest far-left cause. You recall at the time where Antifa members were beating people up, getting violent, attacking police, all while wearing masks. Maybe the legislature's leaders told themselves the issues would fade as college kids went home. And that's the point that I'm making here, too. Once it's no longer in the headlines, and there'll be constant protests, but when you have something as scary as what happened on the subway, when that's not front and center in the paper and on the news, I don't see Governor Hochul really putting a lot of effort into this, or Tish James. But it wasn't, as again, we predicted on this show, when the college kids went home, it didn't stop. As a matter of fact, it went to the communities where these kids returned to. And in this case, local protests in New York City have only grown worse and more threatening. As in that Zionists need to leave subway outrage, which has sparked this mask ban. And that's, again, why I hope it doesn't die off. And even more openly anti-Semitic, quote, I wish Hitler was still here. And the people that had the banner that read, Long Live October 7th. Masking emboldens the demonstrators and intimidates everyone else. That's why the Ku Klux Klan adopted its masks and why so many states banned it in response. And today's masked protesters are every bit as odious as the Klan. Some claim the mask wearing is to prevent doxing over their activism. That's an excuse saying, well, we don't want people to see our face and then attack us. Excuse me? Also, there's no free speech right to protest anonymously. No, it's all about bullying, a license to threaten and even commit violence. Now masks are being abused in total KKK style. James has a duty to reverse course, especially if she wants to keep any hope of winning higher office. Governor Hochul says she'll look at restoring the mask ban, but that's not good enough. She needs to join Mayor Adams in demanding it and to call the legislature back for a special session to pass it. If state lawmakers balk, well, they're all up for election in November. Voters can and should keep track of which politicians insist on protecting the modern version of the Klan. I thought that was a good piece from the New York Post. Now, just to show you how unserious they're taking this, and they have been taking from the beginning, the DA, and they've been busy in Manhattan, the DA's office in Manhattan dropped 7 charges, or let me reword that. They dropped charges against 7 CUNY students and staff that were arrested at a pro-Palestinian occupation. Now, in full disclosure, another 10 cases involving people arrested at the City College are proceeding. But they're starting to drop, and we knew this would be the case. This is what happened with Antifa as well. When you had the headlines of the arrest, everybody seemed to be happy, good. These violent thugs are being arrested. And then we find out later very few were charged. And you got to remember, too, a lot of these protesters are elitists. They're privileged. So they have good lawyers. Their parents make sure that they get the best lawyers because they've got money. You've got the faculty who are making good money can hire good attorneys to protect them. And that's what happened in, I would assume, in 7 cases. Maybe the other 10 were the agitators. Who knows? And this ties in with, I think it ties in with the suspected New York City jihadists that we talked about earlier in the week. These terrorists, some with ties to crossing the border illegally, these suspected terrorists that were caught earlier in the week. Did you hear about this Queens jihadist who was busted with an arsenal of weapons in his SUV? He was ordered held without bail on Thursday. Oh. Judd Sanson is his name, 29, was just blocks away from LaGuardia International Airport when he was stopped by an alert cop. He nervously reached under the seat of his SUV during the first few tense moments of the encounter with the officer. That's never good. They later found a loaded 9mm Glock pistol under the driver's seat. Sanson allegedly told the cops, and this doesn't make a lot of sense, but this is what he told the cops. "Sorry, there's a lot of drunk people nowadays. I live in Jamaica. I was visiting my uncle." He was pulled over because he had obscured license plates. But police already had spotted, listen to this, so he's making these excuses. Police had already spotted a knife strapped to Sanson's leg, along with an MTA reflective vest and a makeshift axe hanging from the ceiling, and a makeshift sword inside the vehicle. In all, the prosecutor said nearly a dozen weapons, an NYPD bulletproof vest, and 179 rounds of ammunition were found inside the black Ford Explorer. This is blocks away from the airport. Sanson stood before the judge with a T-shirt that read, "Dreamer into reality." I'm not sure if that's a reference to dreamer as in the saying about the young people crossing the border. I don't know. Or dreamer into reality. I don't know. This is all, folks, when we have an open, porous border, it's terrifying. And we've talked about the implications, especially earlier in the week, when those suspected terrorists or people with ties to ISIS were busted. How many people are out there that we don't know, the gotaways, that have ties to terrorist organizations? It's something we can't take lightly. Unfortunately, it feels like this administration is taking it lightly. And we've had example after example of his crackdown on the border, which is anything but. I meant to mention this when we were talking about the college campuses. This ties in as well. The House is going to vote on a defense bill that will authorize military pay raises and also crack down, I guess that'll be the word of the day today, but crack down on DEI initiatives. This will tie in as well with, and I'm going to talk about it, just a quick update in the next segment about the Regents exams that we've been talking about. But the House of Representatives is set to vote on a major piece of legislation today outlining the U.S. defense policies for the next fiscal year. This year's bill authorizes $895.2 billion in military spending, which is a $9 billion increase from fiscal year 2024. A main focus of this year's NDAA is the improvement of quality of life for service members. Great. Which members of the Armed Services Committee found to be sorely lacking during a months-long investigation into the issue. Now, this is an important part and why I mention it. It also includes a provision to block Defense Secretary Lloyd Austin from establishing a diversity, equity, and inclusion related committee or group for Pentagon-funded schools. That, and I'm not going to get into the rest of the nitty-gritty, but that has been an issue when we talk about recruitment efforts. A lot of people have seen the wokeness of the military, and it's become a major issue in recruitment. It'll be, it says here, I'm not worried, but I'm frustrated. We're going to go through the same exact dance that we went through last year, said Representative Houlihan. We don't have a ton of time. Why would we spin the same scenario that we saw last year over again when we resolve this nonsensical to me? They're going to put in their own poison pills with no intention to vote for it anyway. And then we lose Democratic support, which you've got to have. But in the end, by the time we've done with the Senate, we'll have a good bill. That's Chrissy Houlihan, Democrat from PA. So they're not happy already with the ban on DEI initiatives. That will tie in to the Regents exams going away in New York in the name of equity. That's coming up next. Stay with us. We'll be right back with Frankly Speaking. It's not good. We're getting more in-person waves than viewer waves. I'm not sure what to think about that. Welcome back to Frankly Speaking here on WYDC TV, Big Fox. A couple of comments from viewers. Good morning, Frank. Good morning. What a shock. Masks can be intimidating, can disguise your face. Who knew? Exactly. No, it's all in the name of the protesters. They're not trying to intimidate while they scream anti-Semitic things at you and ask you to raise your hand if you are a Jewish person or support Jewish people. They're not. The only reason they're trying to disguise their face is they don't want to be called out for their actions, meaning they don't want to be doxxed. They don't want people to find them. They don't want it to maybe affect their employment or their potential in their future. It's interesting how that works. Here's another comment. The Democrats are more than okay with a few internal problems associated with unvetted immigrants, as long as their plan secures millions of new Democratic voters. Thank you, Ken. Keep those comments coming in. All right, quick update on the Regents exam, just because I found this to be interesting, is by Maud Moran. Now, Maud Moran is a New York City public school parent and president of the consulting firm Third Rail. And she said New York State is poised to toss aside its proud history of expecting achievement from its high school students by eliminating the standardized exams that for more than a century have been required to earn a Regents diploma. This has been a topic that we've discussed throughout the week when we learned, I think it was actually on Monday, where we learned that they're contemplating, and it sounds like it's going to happen, dropping the Regents exams, making it voluntary if you want to. But no matter what degree you get, they're all the same. A local degree, it used to be, I think it was local degree, Regents, and maybe partial Regents, something like that. Now they're all the same. Why get rid of Regent standards now? Well, why? Equity, of course. As Education Commissioner Betsy Rosa said in an announcement, the New York State diploma should signify equity for all students. Rosa emphasized her department's, quote, commitment to diversity, equity, and inclusion, and a culturally responsive, sustaining educational framework that was developed to create true equity in New York State's public education. Sounds about right. Think of that statement. The DEI is the focus, not the actual education. And then we wonder why college campuses are the way they are. Because we've said in the past, it doesn't start on the college campuses. It starts well before that. And this is just proof. There's no longer any way to cover up the fact that equity in the hands of union-friendly, merit-adverse education representative means lower standards and no accountability. And I think that's interesting, merit adverse. Like it was said yesterday, this is a prime example of the participation trophy, of everyone gets participation trophy. And they don't care about the standards, they don't care about the accountability, because actually, if they show everybody has the same degree, it looks better for them, or same diploma, it works better for them in the numbers, the graduation rates, etc. With an able assist from ideologues like anti-racist Regent Shino Tanikawa, the state education department is now on the verge of scrapping a long and worthwhile history of expecting graduates to master core academic subject areas by the time they leave high school. It's a sad day for New York public school students. And I was not aware of this, and I learned this today. The Regents test was first administered back in 1866 and have covered a wide range of coursework over the years. And New York is one of only a few states with exam-based high school graduation standards. New York education leaders, as it says here in quotes, have been dumbing down standards and removing accelerated academic pathways for public school students for decades. But SED started laying the groundwork for its current effort in 2019 with its Graduation Measurement Initiative, a mess of typical leftist gobbledygook. Instead of asking students to learn subject matters well enough to pass moderately tough exams, SED now proposes a silly-sounding portrait of a graduate metric that replaces tests with fuzzy measurements, judging students as culturally competent, socially, emotionally competent, effective communicators, and global citizens. New York high schoolers will show they are diploma-worthy with proficiency in soft impossible to measure, quote, service-based learning experiences and participation in the arts. One can already visualize a pro-Palestinian service-based art project that will substitute for passing an algebra Regents. That's exactly the case. She boils it down perfectly. Rosa claimed she consulted a, quote, incredibly diverse group of expert practitioners and the public, including public school students and their families, to come up with this scheme. But pro-merit, standardized tests supporting students and families were, as usual, iced out of SED's outreach. Place NYC, which advocates for merit-based admissions and stronger academic standards, won 40% of the parent-elected seats in last year's City Community Education Council elections, including the majority of seats in several active councils and all the open seats on the citywide council for high schools. But Place parents were never invited to this, quote, incredibly diverse group that Rosa said she convened. Diversity is not about diversity of opinion. I just got to be clear on that. It's quite the opposite. When they use the term diverse, it means our opinion, the people we choose that believe what we believe. There is no diversity of opinion on college campuses or what we're seeing here in the education system in general. The time frame of a promised parent engagement process presenting the new rules is a dead giveaway that Rosa and Tanakawa don't want to hear from parents who demand higher standards and more accountability. These ambassador forums will be held from July to October, but most public school parents get their information from the PTAs, which don't operate in 2 of those months. By the time families return to school and PTAs swing back into action, the engagement process will be drawing to a close. The move to toss standards and make graduation easier is a core part of the anti-racist toolbox, but it's grounded in the ugliest kind of racism. Black students, the state seems to believe, are oppressed by the omnipresent white supremacy that its new education framework sees everywhere and that provides an equity justification for scrapping exams. Disadvantaged students up against the bigotry of low expectations will find the removing the Regents only sets those expectations lower. Nowhere do these proposed changes insist that all New York high school graduates be proficient in basic areas such as English, science, algebra, and social studies. The current required Regents tests that are being rendered optional. Of course, some students will take those optional exams, and the divide between the students who excel and the students left behind will continue to grow. All New York students deserve the challenge and support of high expectations, exam-based graduation standards, and teachers who are up to the task for preparing them for tests. Removing the Regents requirements for graduation does them a tremendous disservice, just as we had mentioned earlier in the week, the dumbing down, again, of the education system. And we have to take a break. A lot more to cover. Keep those comments coming in. We will be right back with Frankly Speaking. And we are back with Frankly Speaking here on WYDC TV Big Fox. I'm not sure why it took so long to go to that last break. I will find out. Here's a comment from a viewer. I'll bet the maskers are largely the same individuals who chant "be kind" and "hate doesn't live here" mantras. Yes, there's the love trumps hate. Remember that one? Yeah, that's what we see. Those same protesters are now the ones unfurling banners that say "Long live October 7th," that are using symbols and flags from Hamas. These were the same ones lecturing us for years about love trumping hate and all the other cliche bumper sticker slogans from that group on the left. So Joe Biden was asked to comment on Hunter Biden, and he said that Hunter was one of the brightest, most decent men that he knows. I'm extremely proud of my son, Hunter. He has overcome an addiction. This was at a joint press conference in Italy with Zelensky. He's one of the greatest, most decent men I know, and I'm satisfied that I'm not going to do anything I said. I don't understand that line. It's kind of confusing. I know it's a typical Biden line, but it's kind of confusing because people were asking, oh, look at these waves coming in. Thank you. That they ask him about pardoning. And now the question has been raised about other avenues that he could go down to lessen the sentence if there is a jail time component. He's one of the greatest, most decent men I know, and I'm satisfied that I'm not going to do anything I said. I said I'd abide by the jury decision. I will do that, and I will not pardon him. A couple interesting things there. I'll abide by the jury's decision. That's not about sentencing, right? And then I will say what I do. I will not pardon him. There's other options that we have. We talked about it yesterday. What is it called? Commute the sentence? Meaning that he can, there's mechanisms there where he can make sure that he doesn't get jail time. That would still be technically supporting the jury's decision, and it would also technically not be pardoning Hunter Biden. So still leaving some options open from the White House. Now, there's gun rights group. I know we have a lot of Second Amendment supporters out there, many proud members of SCOPE, the NRA, whatever the case may be. What did you think? And I know the media was bringing this up a lot, and Fox News has an interesting piece that there's gun rights groups that are calling the law used to convict Hunter unconstitutional. But I think the way they worded it is very, very well done. Eric Pratt, the senior vice president from Gun Owners of America, said that Joe Biden has done everything in his power to weaponize his administration against guns, gun owners, and dealers. And it's incredibly ironic to now see his own son caught up in those efforts. Yeah, the irony, and so many people said it, even those on the left, saying how awkward it was that his first speech after Hunter's guilty verdict was at an anti-gun rally, for lack of a better term, anti-gun convention. Pratt continued with, gun owners of America believe that the underlying law is unconstitutionally broad, but so long as it remains on the books, Hunter deserves no special treatment or mercy. And I thought that was a very good point. Mike McCoy, a former federal prosecutor and Second Amendment attorney, said the prosecution was masterful in how they presented it to the jury, as evidenced by the fact that it only took 3 hours for them to reach a verdict. While some might question the validity of the gun law used to prosecute Biden, given the current administration's disdain for the Second Amendment and their efforts to take guns out of the hands of law-abiding citizens, I suspect most gun owners won't lose any sleep over this particular conviction. Yeah, the irony there of being very proud, hence the reason why I was giving that speech, of trying to take the guns out of hands of law-abiding citizens, while and in that speech talking about families have a responsibility to keep guns safe, all while his son found guilty of lying on a form to get a gun. It's just interesting. Countless lives are destroyed every year under the federal government's unconstitutional and immoral regulations. We proudly work to eliminate these laws and create a free world. Just as we have in many other cases, we stand ready to assist Mr. Biden in his challenge of federal gun laws, said FPC President Brandon Combs. That's Firearms Policy Coalition. Interesting. Just, I would like to get your take on it because I know so many people out there, strong supporters, proud supporters of the Second Amendment. We got to take our last break of this hour, so stay with us. This is Frankly Speaking here on WYDC TV, Big Fox. Where did the hour go? Unbelievable. Welcome back to Frankly Speaking here on WYDC TV, Big Fox. We're broadcasting live from the Hesselson studio on this beautiful Friday morning. We have so many things to cover in the next hour, and I hope you'll join us. If you're just joining us, welcome. Here's a comment. We were talking earlier about the Regents exams, or the lack thereof in New York State, soon to be lack thereof. A comment from a viewer. A fact. My high school kids cannot read cursive and have not for a long time. I can only give a birthday card by printing a message, or they say, read it to me. Oh, that's interesting. Now, that's our education system. So you have to print it. I mean, I guess that makes sense. You don't really see cursive that often, now that I think of it. Wow. Thank you for that. Thank you for that comment. Something to think about. Hunter Biden, as we were just mentioning, Hunter. Just one last thing on that. I don't have a lot about Hunter. I have a couple things maybe in the top of the hour we'll talk about. But I want to get to, if you're just joining us, today is Trump's 78th birthday. Former President Donald J. Trump's 78th birthday. And as I said at the beginning of the program, I was doing show prep late yesterday and early this morning, as I always do. And I started to see a lot of articles talking about his 78th birthday. I said, these aren't typical outlets that would be wishing the former president a happy birthday or celebrating this in some way. what was really interesting is now, I learned this morning, now we are supposed to focus on a candidate's age. After 3.5 years, we're really supposed to wonder if a 78-year-old man can be president. You're saying, well, how does that work? Look at our president now and look who's running for re-election. I understand. But now, how many times did we ask back during the election of 2020, hey, could maybe we have some questions about Biden's health, mental health? Could we talk about his age? No, off limits. How dare you? It's ageism. They had a whole bunch of things they would throw at you. And then we said, well, remember at the beginning of Trump's term after 2016, the media demanded that Trump take a cognitive test, and he did, and then the media was disappointed because he came back passing it with flying colors. Could we maybe make those same demands, saying that if the current president doesn't take a cognitive test, it's a threat to the country, the democracy, it's a threat to who knows what Trump could do. Remember, that's what they would say. If he's not healthy, his finger could be on the button. Not the same kind of outrage or even questioning of Biden. But now we learn this morning on Donald J. Trump's 78th birthday, now is the time to focus on age. And we're going to talk about that in the next hour at some point as well. Plenty of other issues to get to. And we're going to be talking with Lori DiNardo, the Watkins Glen mayor and also chairperson of the committee for the 2024 Watkins Glen Waterfront Festival. And if you're not familiar with that, this is their 31st year, so you should be. But at 2 o'clock tomorrow, the Cardboard Boat Regatta kicks off, which is always a lot of fun. We're going to be here. We're going to be there from Big Fox. Of course, we're going to be filming it, as we always do, and we'll play that for you in a couple weeks. And I will get you all the times and the dates for that so you won't miss it. I will be hosting the program along with fellow host Elisa Trosha, and we always have fun every year. So I hope that you'll tune into that, or I hope you'll join us and say hi tomorrow at the Watkins Glen Waterfront Festival. It may be tough to find me. We're going to be recording a lot, but if you do, stop over and say hi. Let's take a break and start hour number 2 of Frankly Speaking here on WYDC TV. Big Fox, stay with us. Here we are, hour number 2 of Frankly Speaking on WYDC TV. Big Fox, broadcasting live from the Hesselson studio. I'm your host, Frank Acom. We've received a lot of great waves and a lot of great, questions, comments, concerns, and criticisms from viewers. So you see the number on the bottom of your screen. Reach out at any time. Quickly, Hunter Biden has dropped his laptop lawsuit against Rudy Giuliani. Hunter Biden is dropping his lawsuit accusing Rudy Giuliani and the former New York City mayor's ex-lawyer of manipulating data found on his infamous laptop. Biden's lawyer, Lowell, filed the stipulation for dismissal Thursday in the U.S. District Court for the Southern District. Here's a good comment from a viewer. I'm just going through some Hunter Biden stuff quickly if you're just joining us. Tell me again how this show managed a former 1-hour time slot. It is amazing, isn't it? I think about it sometimes when we get done with the program, and I'm not sure 2 hours is enough most days, but 1 hour, I don't know how we did it with more breaks and everything. It almost seems impossible, the olden days. It's only been a couple months, but no, I agree. I think the 2-hour format is much better for our conversations. Kristen Fleming at the New York Post, just to wrap things up here about Hunter Biden, said, bravo to London Roberts for showing the Bidens grace, even as they still largely ignore Hunter's daughter. Now, London Roberts is the author of the new book, Out of the Shadows, My Life Inside the Wild World of Hunter Biden. She's a former lover of Hunter Biden who had the child with Hunter Biden, the child that the Bidens refused to acknowledge, at one point refused to acknowledge them because of, I think, some type of settlement. They did acknowledge it, but have ignored her. Roberts is downright charitable in her recounting of events, even as she admits that no one in the Biden family, not even Hunter, has yet met this 5-year-old girl, Navy Joan. I did not realize Hunter had not even met her. I know they have talked over Zoom, but imagine that. And to know this little girl, who is Joe Biden's blood, that the president wouldn't, still a president, wouldn't do the honor of meeting his granddaughter or even acknowledge his granddaughter. Roberts, the girl's cast-aside mother, accused much of Hunter's terrible behavior as a symptom of his drug use. even saying that he is not this villain that the media portrays him to be. But who is he? Complex and charming, according to Roberts. She has shown great restraint for the sake of her sweet child who was denied the last name Biden, lest she be a stain on the pristine family tree. Roberts now says, after negotiations, that Navy will be able to make the choice when she gets older. I don't know why you'd want at that point. Just out of pure, not stubbornness isn't even the right word. Why would you want that name if the name doesn't want you? And let's say it. That's what they've shown time and again. It's a striking contrast to the way that Bidens have treated their inconvenient family addition and her mother. The Delaware dynasty has regarded the Arkansas native as toxic sludge and a backwater strumpet, parading her illegitimate kid around for clout. They've denied Roberts and their young granddaughter at every turn until they could no longer hide from the terrible public relations. Faced with a self-inflicted scandal, the Bidens quietly dropped a statement of acknowledgement to People magazine last July. Yes, they started to see the writing on the wall that it made, for a man who runs on empathy, right? That's what they try to tell us. He's so empathetic. He's had so many trials and tribulations in his life. Biden cares about you. He's sympathetic. He's empathetic. And then we saw how he treated his granddaughter, and that was turned on its head. I think it was turned on its head long before that, but I'm saying maybe the everyday man or woman who just catches the news at night quickly. So when that started to become a scandal, they realized they had a problem on their hands, so they released a statement to all places. People magazine. Wow. Just acknowledging. The simple fact of acknowledging the granddaughter. But the Bidens aren't the Brady Bunch, though they've long pretended to be. They're as dysfunctional as, and I don't know this reference, but maybe you do, as the brawling Gallaghers from Shameless, but with health insurance, college degrees, and with power. Hunter was sleeping with his brother's widow and with Roberts, and according to her book, with a friend from their social circle. I don't want to get too much into this because I know it's in the morning. You know what? I'm going to... I better not get into too much of this. But I think Kristen Fleming has a good point, that she's shown grace when the Bidens haven't. I know many of you may end up reading her book. I'm curious to read it as well. They can be forgiven for some family foibles. We all have them to varying degrees. The issue here is their hypocrisy, touting their cohesiveness and their piety, and making some of the president's grandchildren marquee players in the Biden political narrative, while so cruelly denying another. Now, Roberts, to her credit, takes the slights in stride. When Piers Morgan, who spoke to her on his show last week, brought up an interview in which Joe Biden bragged about his 4 granddaughters, Navy is number 5 if you're not aware, Roberts said she stopped watching the news. When friends sent her articles in which Biden did not acknowledge Navy, she excused it. Hunter and I had not come to terms yet, she said. The advice that honestly I've been given from my attorney is that grandparents don't usually step into a child's life until their child does. And I think that Joe has stepped back and waited for that to happen for Hunter before he feels comfortable enough to step forward. Wow. Talk about giving credit where credit's not due. After 5 long years, what else are Joe and Jill Biden waiting for? Lest anyone judge her for exposing Hunter's sordid life in her book, knowing that it's no worse than anything revealed in his recent gun felony trial or his own incriminating memoir, Beautiful Things. In fact, she tempers the bad with his good deeds. A man is addicted to altruism as he is to crack cocaine. Roberts writes about the first son giving his jacket to a homeless man only to realize that he left a cell phone, cocaine rocks, and late brother Beau Biden's dog tags in the garment. Oops. Roberts gives the Prince Charming credit for not encouraging her to have an abortion. She even praises him for having gone above and beyond the mandated monthly calls with his daughter, who again, he has never met in person, saying she appreciates it tremendously. Imagine being mandated to make a monthly call to your daughter. What a low bar, as Kristen Fleming says, for fatherhood. Yeah, really. Who could blame Roberts for writing a book, considering she had to fight tooth and nail to get child support and then got only 25% of her original ask? So yes, it's hard to think of Hunter in these glowing terms that she uses. He also gave his daughter one of the worthless paintings and proceeds from another. Considering most of his art has so far been bought by his and Joe's cronies, it's safe to say Biden donors are paying for child support. It seems the only one not enabling the guy was a jury who found him guilty. Meanwhile, Roberts told Morgan that Hunter has a lot on his plate right now. Navy has waited 5 years. She can wait a couple more months before meeting her father. I think Hunter really wants to step up and do the right thing. Well, as Kristen Fleming says, hope springs eternal. Okay, that was just a quick update, finishing up our discussion on Hunter. Not that we had much of a discussion on Hunter this morning. Here's a comment from a viewer. If you go to 3 hour show, please don't start earlier. If I think about Democrats at 5 a.m., I'm going to have a nightmare. Well, first of all, there's no talks of going 3 a.m. I got to clear that up. But I can assure you, if that talks ever come up, it will not be earlier. I can assure you that from my end. It will not be a 5 a.m. start time at all. So we've talked about this a lot in the past, and I know I've got a break coming up. But I want you to think about this and get your opinion on this. We've seen, as I mentioned, today's Donald Trump's 78th birthday. And now the media all of a sudden is focused on a candidate's age. And now it's a major factor. It hasn't been for 3.5 years. Now it really is. Fine. So we know that Joe Biden, throughout his career, but specifically when he started running against Trump, has received kid glove treatment from the media. That the media has done everything they can do to protect him, throw softball questions at him, cover up, censor stories like the Hunter Biden laptop issue. We know that he's had it cushy. Well, again proves that a Democrat could never handle being a Republican for even a moment. Because when he gets asked what I wouldn't even say is a tough question, it's a fair question in most instances, he really loses his temper, gets angry. He has called reporters names. His staff, the people behind the scenes, has actually sent out letters to news organizations demanding that they cover certain issues and steer away from others. And unfortunately, as I've mentioned on the program in the past, in the newsrooms, that would work for some. Now, some you would think, because the media is very narcissistic, very, very egocentric, that many in the media would say, how dare you tell me how I do my job? But again, at the end of the day, they went to journalism school, and they were taught at journalism school who they have to support and who they can't support. And in this instance, they're not going to go after Joe Biden. So Joe Biden said, while being asked at a joint press conference of questions, he said, I wish you guys would play by the rules a little bit. Now, this is a man. Well, and then he said, I'm here to talk about a critical situation in Ukraine. You're asking me another subject. Now, there's a couple of reasons for this. We've heard in the past that there's speculation that many instances he gets the questions ahead of time from reporters. He has a list of who he calls on and won't call on. So when something goes a little amiss, he gets upset. He has his cue cards in front of him, his note cards, and that's what he wants to talk about. He can't be thrown off with any questions outside of that. So he gets upset. The White House Correspondents Association issued a statement. Kelly O'Donnell, who's an NBC News reporter and president of the association, issued a statement. And I just want you to think, if during the Trump administration, when it was the worst thing in the world to call the media the enemy of the people, worst thing in the world, when he was giving a press conference, which sometimes would last very, very long, and he was giving them all the time in the world, doing this on numerous bases. We know that Biden is historically one of the least transparent with the presidents, not giving press conferences, because we see what happens when he does. When he has to go off script, it does not go well. So from the campaign aspect of it, it doesn't make sense for them to put him in front of the press. But imagine if Trump, when he got a question, said, would you guys play by the rules? They would say it's a threat to democracy. It's a threat to the media. And because remember that time, the media is so full of themselves that they are the most important thing, keeping America safe and alive. So how dare anybody criticize them? Because they live in their bubble and the media people think media people are the most important. But this is what Kelly O'Donnell said in her statement. The White House Correspondents Association believes that it is in the public interest to make clear that at a presidential press conference, at home or abroad, there are no preconditions regarding questions, topics. So what she's doing more than criticizing Biden is she's covering their you-know-what by saying, no, we don't, there are no specific topics. Don't worry. Because we know in instances they get the questions ahead of time. So no, there are no rules. While the White House does determine the number of reporters the president will recognize, it is up to professional journalists to decide what to ask. Any leader may prefer that reporters ask only one question or ask only about a topic that is of the most interest to the president or another world leader. But a free press functions independently. She added the association welcomes more opportunities to pose a range of questions to the president in a press conference setting. So this will happen every once in a while. They'll criticize him for not being involved enough with the press or that he went after the press. Nothing comes from it. There's not like they're going to give him negative press. The president has given relatively few press conferences and interviews compared to his recent predecessors, and increasingly has vented about journalists asking questions he doesn't like. Remember recently telling, when someone asked him, do you trust in Kamala Harris if she became president? Did you fall on your head? Remember he said that. We could go through the list. It's just another example. I always try to bring up media-related stories because I find it fascinating how easy Democrats have it and how often they end up complaining about the media. Remember MSNBC Katie Tur asking Pelosi, or following up on something Pelosi said and saying, well, you can't really blame Trump for the pandemic. And she said, well, if you want to be a Trump apologist, by all means. Just because she got a tough follow-up questioning her lie during the interview, calling Katie Tur a Trump. She even said, admitting her bias, I don't think anybody would call me a Trump apologist. That's for sure. Anyway, we got to take a break because I'm running late. I'm getting excited for hour two here. Stay with us. Coming up after the next segment, we're going to be talking with Lori DiNardo, the Watkins Glen mayor and the chairperson for tomorrow's Watkins Glen Waterfront Festival. So stay with us. We'll be right back with Frankly Speaking after this. Boy, our beautiful view of historic Market Street as we broadcast live from the Hesselson studio. We will have in just a little bit our Steuben Senior Services Fund interview with Lori DiNardo. So wait, stay tuned for that. This is just, I'm reporting this as news. I'm going to make no statement on it. I just thought maybe it's something that you would want to weigh in. You see the number on the bottom of your screen. Representative Andy Ogles indicated Thursday that he plans to introduce legislation that would require President Biden to notify Congress if he takes drugs to improve his cognitive abilities. Quote, we know that he's receiving some type of cocktail to help him with his cognitivity. That's interesting. I haven't heard it said that way. His ability to function, for him to have any energy. The first-term congressman argued that his No Juicing Joe Act is necessary because the White House refuses to test the 81-year-old's cognitive abilities. Since the White House will not give us any test to that end, we're asking that he submit and notify Congress when he's taking any sort of cocktail or anything that might alter the state of his mind and his ability to perform. I feel sorry for Joe Biden. I don't really think that he knows at times where he is or who he is, and that's a shame. One might argue that it's elder abuse. And then he goes on to name and show some videos from various instances where he has concern. There you are. Now this goes kind of piggybacks off of when former President Trump said that he wanted a drug test before the debate. And boy, the debate's coming right up, isn't it? Ogles said at the end, I'm skeptical there will be a debate. We will see. Yes, I'm skeptical too, but I'm just reporting that as the news. I do think there is a point to be had about, and I go back to Trump in the early days where they of his presidency, they demanded that he take a cognitive test, they being the media. He he did, pass with flying colors. I remember their disappointment that the sitting president of the United States did not have some mental health issue. They were genuinely disappointed, not thinking of the implications of what that would mean at the world front, everywhere. It wasn't that. They were disappointed that he was healthy. But when President Biden got in there, we started seeing gaffes, you started to see some issues. Not once, a demand for a cognitive test. So, and I mention all this because Trump, we are now learning that it is important to look at someone's age if they're running for president and look at the signs of aging. After 3.5 years, this is now an important issue. Now, I know what you're saying. What about the other side? What about the man running for re-election who's older than President Trump? Never mind that. Now is, as Yahoo.com says, at 78 Trump, too, is showing signs of aging. So now it's time to report on some aging issues. Interesting how times change so quickly. Because, again, looking at show prep this morning, not used to seeing any kind of birthday message for former President Trump and all the time he was in office or thereafter. But now there is. Making sure the headlines, most of the headlines, to make sure you know exactly how old he is. Also, and I don't know how much we're going to get to this because there's not really a lot to report that you haven't already seen, but as the headlines read all morning long, Trump returns to the Capitol for the first time since the January 6th insurrection. First time. Making sure to get that point in there. Also making sure, in many instances, the first time since becoming a convicted felon. We will talk about that and much more. But before that, really looking forward to this, we're going to be talking with Watkins Glen Mayor Lori DiNardo. When we come back, we're going to be talking about the ever fun, the always anticipated Cardboard Boat Regatta, which is tomorrow, starts at 2, but the festivities at the Waterfront Park are from 11 a.m. till 7 p.m. I couldn't remember what time it started. So full disclosure, when we come back, the interview was pre-recorded. So if we mess up the date, it is tomorrow. The event is tomorrow. Also, you'll see a lot of people walking by, and you know it's not normally the case at 7:20 a.m. So stay with us. We will be right back with our guest after this quick commercial break. Welcome back to Frankly Speaking here on WYDC TV Big Fox. I'm your host, Frank Acom, and this is the Steuben Senior Services Fund section of our program. And joining us back in the studio, Watkins Glen Mayor Lori DiNardo. Welcome back.
Yeah, thanks a lot. It's good to be here.
This is an exciting time of year because it is time for the annual tradition, the summer tradition, the Cardboard Boat Regatta. How's planning going?
Great.
But it's one thing I want to mention, because we always talk about the regatta here because we broadcast and we look forward to it every year. But this is really a waterfront festival. People may not be aware of that. So what does that entail?
So it's 10 o'clock in the morning. We start at Seneca Harbor Park. We go till 7 o'clock at night, and there's lots of fun things to do all day long. The actual Cardboard Regatta race is at 2 p.m. But during the day, we have about 45 vendors. Wow. Food, crafts, lots of fun things for the kids to do. We've enhanced that side this year so that we really want it to be a family event. Sure. But it's an all-day event, and then it ends with a five-man trio as a band from 4 to 7. Wow,
so it really is a full day. And I know we all talk about the Cardboard Boat Regatta because it kind of is synonymous with the Waterfront Festival. That begins at 2, right?
That's correct.
Okay, so how long have you been a part of this?
I've been on the committee about 5 years. I've been chairing it for the last 3.
Oh, okay. And so you must love it.
I do love it.
Is it
just
a lot?
Blast.
When do you start planning for next year's?
We start in January.
Do you really?
Yeah, we take a little bit of a break and we start right up.
Does it seem to get easier each year?
We have a great committee.
Yeah.
Yeah, we have a lot of really fun volunteers, and it takes a strong committee, a very committed committee, and then we couldn't do the festival without our sponsors, including Big Fox.
Yeah.
We have an enormous amount of sponsors every year. Some have jumped on, some new ones this year.
Yeah, good.
We have a new cycle boat in Watkins Glen. I don't know if you've heard of that, but they'll be there, and we've added some other sponsors, and we just couldn't do it without them.
Well, everybody wants to be a part of it because it's so great for our area, for tourism, but also, like I said, it's kind of the kickoff to summer for many people.
Yep.
So
exactly.
Now we got to talk about the boats. Okay. So how many boats do you have this year, give or take?
Close to 40.
Oh, wow. That's a little up from last year.
Yeah, we had 30 last year.
Wow. So it's back in full force after COVID. We blame everything on COVID here on the program.
Right.
So have you, through the years, as chair or the times that you just went as a fan, do you have a favorite boat?
Yeah, one that comes to mind was the Glenora boat that was built. It was about 24 feet long,
yeah.
And it was a wine bottle on its side.
Oh, that's right.
And they had about 12 individuals in it. It was amazing.
Yeah.
I don't know what happened to it. I wish they kept it and brought it back,
yeah.
But that's one of my favorites that I can think of.
So what do you look, and when you look at the boats, what do you look for a winner? Do you think it's about the looks, kind of the theme of it, or is it about the skill behind it? What's your favorite part of it?
So it's a combination of things.
Yeah.
I love when we get the children involved.
Yeah.
When they come on, and it doesn't really matter what their boat looks like, but they put effort into it. And
yeah.
We had a case last year where a young girl and her dad were in a not a very big boat, but they sunk pretty quickly at the start, and that dad swam and pushed that boat all the way around to the end while that little girl was in there, and it was just amazing.
I think, and I know this sounds bad in a way, but I get to watch the coverage, of course, because I'm doing the play-by-play for the coverage. There is something about when they sink right away and they go the whole time that you end up rooting for them by the end, right? Yeah. That's who I would vote for People's Choice, and I wanted to mention that, the vote for People's Choice. So if you go to the Cardboard Boat Regatta, it begins at 2, you get to have a say, you get to have a vote in who the best boat ends up being. And there's something special about it this year, and we were just talking about this earlier in the week, weirdly enough. Who is a sponsor? Is that the right term? Where does the People's Choice vote go? That's the better way to put it.
So we work with the Schuyler County Suicide Prevention Office, and so the money is donated. They actually split it with our committee because, remember, the festival itself, we don't charge,
right.
and the parking is free, so we don't charge. We only charge based on, boat entries and vendors. So half of that money goes to the committee and half of the money goes to suicide prevention, which is wonderful.
That's wonderful. And that's another point that I'd even mention. With everything to do this summer, how many things can you go to where you say free? This is it that I know of.
Bring your chair, come early, and you got a full day of fun.
Well, that's what I was going to ask. What is a tip for someone who has never been to and this is the 31st annual, so shame on you for never being before, but what would you say is a tip for someone that's never been?
Come early. The parking around the village is tight anyways.
Yeah, sure.
So if you can come early, you can park on the side streets and, walk in. We do dedicate a number of spots for handicap accessible individuals, which is really important to us as well. So we put a number of parking spots real close to the event for that. So the other thing I would say is, people like to bring their pets. We kind of deter that because the pavement gets really hot.
Very hot, yes.
And the crowd, we don't really have a great way to measure it. We, say usually it's like 3,000 to 4,000 people. It's an enormous, really fun event.
Oh, it's great. And I'm glad you said new this year, even more stuff for the kids. And I would highly recommend that everybody bring their appetite.
Yeah, we've got some really cool food vendors. We have additional ones this year. We always have our favorites that, come from around, but we have some new ones coming in. We actually had to close off the vendor applications because we're at max. We have no space left.
Wow, that's a good problem to have. Yeah. Wow. What's your typical day look like on Cardboard Boat Regatta, or I should say Waterfront Festival Day?
Yeah, so it starts tomorrow about 7 a.m. in preparation and setup. And then we couldn't do it without, our local police, fire, and BPW. So the village staff help, set things up. The tents will be going up tomorrow. Parking will be closed off. And then Saturday morning, same thing. I'm there about 7. Committee shows up, and we're just rallying to get, everything ready.
How many volunteers do you think are involved in all this?
We have a committee of about 30.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, we've added some new ones. People know it's fun.
Yeah.
We really have a good time.
If you're going to be in a committee, you don't very often put committee and fun together.
And that's
pretty
right.
rare. Can people still sign up for, not this year, of course, but sign up for the committee?
Yeah, sure. Watkins Glen Promotions, that's the entity that has the oversight of the 4 big events in the area, and this being one of them. And we're always looking for volunteers.
Right. And there's so much to do. And if you're going to volunteer for something, why not have it be a great day? And they always seem to have such an energy around it, such a positive, upbeat energy. What do you think makes the whole day so special?
I think expanding it being a family event has been really a positive change. In the past, there wasn't as much to do, if anything, to do, for children. And so we've really enhanced that part. And, I think it's really made a difference from what I can see.
And isn't it say something about events like this that are so important in today's culture that brings the community together? Because we've talked about on the program so often where there seems to be that lack of community involvement. And this is an example where the community does really get involved.
Yeah, they really do. And I'll tell you, being mayor, I'm so proud of the community. And I love being downtown and talking to people. And there's really no one that complains about the Waterfront Festival. When you're mayor, you get complaints, but
about everything.
Yeah, but in this case, it's just so positive and so much fun. It just makes it a joy.
Yeah.
You're tired at the end of the day, but when you look back on it, it's just wonderful.
It was all worth it, right?
Yeah.
Well, let's talk about that. You mentioned that you are the mayor of Watkins Glen. How's it been going?
It's been going good.
Yeah.
It's I've been there Just a year. Been on the board 8 years, and I have an incredible board. You know, we're working together as a team. Really great staff in the village, and you know, I love it. I love being downtown and just seeing how I can help. And
Sure.
you know, I'm a problem solver,
Yeah.
and so you know, as a mayor, you have to do that. And a lot of really great positive things have happened in the village, including some of the enhancements through the the DRI project,
Yeah.
with the, the state grants, and you know, you've seen some improvements just in the parks.
Oh,
and yeah, it's just it's a pleasure, really.
Yeah. Did your time on the board help prepare you for it, or was there a learning curve?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's not easy to jump on a board when you know, municipal laws and budgeting is totally nothing
Yeah.
that I had done before, and so you know, any experience that you can get there definitely helps
Sure.
you and prepares you.
Do you have any exciting projects in store?
Well, we're just finishing up some of our final projects with our parks, but
Okay.
the new one coming is a new ADA all-inclusive playground in Clute
Oh.
Park.
Oh, what a great idea.
Yeah, so that's coming. Break ground probably late summer. It'll go into the winter. Hopefully, it'll be done by the end of this year.
Mhm.
But really wonderful addition to Clute Park, so that you know, children
Yeah.
of all ages and whatever
All needs, yeah.
issues they might
Yeah.
have, what needs, and you know, under the ADA compliance, we've got some really cool equipment coming
Oh, that's great.
for playground, and yeah, that's really exciting.
What's the time frame on that? Is there a time frame?
It looks like it hopefully will be done by the end of the year.
Oh, that's great.
Yeah.
That's great. I know last time you were on the program, we talked about the scourge of our area, which are sticker stores. How's it
Oh.
going? Still an issue?
Yes, I take a deep breath on that one. We had 5 at one time.
Yeah.
We're down to 1. They don't they don't call themselves sticker stores.
I know.
But yeah, it's a continuing problem. The state, at least through this budget cycle, has made some changes. The Office of Cannabis Management is now helping.
And that's saying
Which was
something if you've been
is-
following it.
Yeah, it's been really tough because they put the, they opened up marijuana laws, which is, great. I have nothing against it, but it really
Turning the Wild West.
It created a nightmare for our little towns.
And it sounds like they've got new management in the Office of Cannabis Management, so hopefully that's helpful. I think the biggest problem was, and the people may not realize because they may not even bother them, but it's basically a speakeasy. There's no taxes coming to us, right? And that's the biggest. Yeah. It's a lot of cash too, is what it looks like.
Yeah.
But that's really remarkable because I know you've been outspoken really from the beginning. So to knock away 4 out of 5 is impressive.
Yeah, I've been working hard, and again, we want a licensed dispensary.
Mm-hmm.
We would welcome it, but it has to be licensed,
Yeah.
and that's the difference.
Yeah.
So nothing against cannabis.
Yeah, the legal, it's the law, right?
Yeah.
So it's legal, no problem. It's the kind of shady dealings. And like you said, they don't call them sticker stores. I don't even know what they call them anymore.
I don't know either.
So I probably should have done the research before now. Do you have 2-year terms or 4-year terms?
4-year term.
Oh, good. So you still have plenty of time to get
Yep.
all your, is there any goals you're looking forward to in the next 3.5 years?
Yeah, it's always infrastructure.
Yeah, it always is.
Yeah. So you continue to work with the state. Even there's federal money out there to, our water system. We're in the middle of a first phase of a project to upgrade our water system. That's
Okay.
a big one.
Yeah.
But when you think about our communities and what's underground and how aged our piping, it's just
You don't want to think about it.
it's
It's the
an
problem.
ongoing
Yeah.
struggle, and we see it in the winter especially because we get a lot of water breaks and such. But we're working through it. That's one thing I would say. And staffing has been pretty steady. I'm really trying to retain police officers.
Yes.
That's an ongoing struggle because one unit competes after the other.
Yes.
We have a very busy police department.
Yeah.
And then the other thing I would say is, and I think all of the communities are dealing with this, is our firefighters.
Mhm.
They're 100% volunteer,
Yeah.
and it's an enormous amount of hours, and you're just not getting the volume of people that volunteer.
No.
And so how do we plan for that? 'Cause it's really
You can't.
important, obviously.
And that goes back to what we were saying about community, the volunteer aspect of things. We've talked about a lot on this program, and there doesn't seem to be that heart to volunteer anymore. And that's why they have the name escapes me, but those great events showing people this is what it's like to be a volunteer fireman and
Yeah.
firefighter, excuse me.
Yeah.
And I think more people that realize what it entails would really want to be a part of it because they care about their community
Yeah.
at the end of the day.
And really targeting the younger generation,
Yes.
even right to the school level, when they're in high school and getting some interest there is really important. But, we're just seeing the numbers, and I know all of the mayors I talk to around the area, they're all feeling the same thing.
Of course. Now, I'll get away from that because it's all about the fun stuff is what we're talking about. It's the 2024 Watkins Glen Waterfront Festival. Just before we go, what would you say to someone who's on the fence about going this Saturday, starting at 10 a.m. or 11 a.m., and then 2 o'clock for the Cardboard Boat Regatta?
I think that you should come because it's going to be sunny.
Yes.
It's going to be about 70. Now, the water's about 50.
But if you're not in the boat, it doesn't matter.
Yep, it's going to be a beautiful day. No rain in the forecast, and come on down. We'd love to have you.
Well, thanks so much for being on the show, and let's do it again next year.
Love to.
All right, we'll be right back with Frankly Speaking here on WYDC TV. Big Fox, stay with us. Welcome back to Frankly Speaking. Thank you to our guest during the Steuben Senior Services Fund section of our program, Lori DiNardo. We appreciate that. And tomorrow's going to be a lot of fun at the Cardboard Boat Regatta. Again, the fun begins at 11 a.m., runs till 7, but the regatta itself kicks off at 2. Okay, we've been talking about Trump and his birthday today and how the media all of a sudden is focused on age. We've got this comment from a viewer. How absolutely ridiculous a double standard with age and what happened to ageism. Good point. But I do have a question that puzzles me. Why doesn't the right counter some of the rules and demands for the debate? And other issues, why is it all one-sided? Can't Trump set some of his own requests or just refuse to debate? I feel a setup may be in store. Yes. Let's dissect that because it's a great question. We've talked about it a little bit on the program. I think there's two things that happened. Trump somewhat painted himself into a corner saying, I'll debate Biden anytime, anywhere, any place. Even saying, I don't care who the moderators are. They're all going to be unfair against me anyway, whoever you want to pick. So Biden comes out in what I think is a show of desperation. The incumbent calling for demand, or for debates, demanding debates, and setting one extremely early, the earliest ever in a presidential election. So I think that's an act of desperation when he sees his polls. He knows the bar will be set low, so he doesn't have to do much. But also, I think when he made his demands of what the debate must be, he thought Trump would then say, no, this is biased, this is unfair, I'm not going to do it. Then Biden would have the talking point, see, he was scared to debate me. He said anytime, any place, anywhere, but he didn't mean it. Just like he didn't debate the Republicans running against him. He is too scared to debate me because I beat him the last time. That would have been his talking points. So Trump, who did kind of paint himself into a corner, said, all right, I'll call your bluff. Let's do it. That's why I think there hasn't been more pushback. Because if Trump does say, no, we want this, we don't want this, Biden can say, see, he's scared, we're going to back away. Now, Trump has made some indication he has a few things he wanted, but again, he said he wanted to stand the whole time, and now it sounds like, nope, the Biden campaign says we're sitting the whole time. And Trump seemed to kind of acquiesce because Trump really thinks, and probably rightfully so, this is a great moment for him because the media is not covering his rallies the way they should be, not giving him any attention outside of the courthouse. That they gave him some attention, which they kind of regretted a little bit of that too. So I think he sees this as a wonderful opportunity. It worries me when you say I feel a setup may be in store. I agree. It worries me because the bar has been set so low by Trump and by Republicans and by the media who want to see Biden do well. And probably by the Biden campaign in some instances, they want to set the bar so low that if Joe goes out there and really just has a few points, not even great home run scores, it's a few good points, they'll say, see, just like the State of the Union, he came out and did his best when he needed to. You can read the headlines already. The best performance of his life. Joe Biden shows that when the moment matters, he can come through with flying colors. I mean, it's all so cliche and all so predictable. They don't even have to hold a debate. They probably already have those articles written. So I think that's one reason why Biden was willing to do the debate if it all comes out. And again, I'm not convinced this is all going to happen, meaning the debates themselves. But he set it up so that he had a talking point either way. And you've got to remember, too, some people believe, and I'm not saying this, I'm saying some people who've commented on this program think that Biden may get the questions ahead of time. Let's push that aside. Let's say that's not the case. He's going to know the general idea, and they do get, both sides get to throw in some things they'd like to see come up. Whether or not the moderators use them, that's another thing. So Joe's going to know there's a few things that are going to come up no matter what. Abortion's going to come up. The border's going to come up, and he'll have an answer for that. That's why he put the executive order in. It's not successful. We know it's not doing anything. But just like Governor Hochul, when it comes to public safety, you can say, I did something, even if it's not effective. January 6th will come up, numerous instances. Most likely Trump's convictions will come up, though that may be a little trickier because Biden was hoping to bring up the convicted felon thing, but now it's a little trickier with his son. But they'll find a way. So they'll have those questions laid out. He'll have practiced so much. It'll be like the State of the Union. He'll have practiced so much that if he gets even a laugh line in, a talking point that really, oh, wow, he really hit that out of the park, it will be so well rehearsed. So nothing will be ad-libbed. But I agree with the setup instance where they're going to be able to cut off the mics. How often will they be cutting off Trump's mics early? How often will they do it in a way that affects him negatively? I feel the same as you do. I totally understand your concern. We got to take another break. We'll be right back. Frankly Speaking, stay with us. Broadcasting live from the Hesselson studio. Another example of how quick this program goes. We are almost through. We've got one more break. I received this comment from a viewer. Will YDC, Big Fox, be broadcasting or rebroadcasting the Cardboard Boat Regatta? Boy, I'm glad you asked that. I'm really glad that you asked that. There are your times and your days of the Watkins Glen Cardboard Boat Regatta on here, Big Fox, that's WYDC, and on our sister station, WJKP. So you have a little time. I'm going to show that to you as it nears. We put it together. We get all the footage. We have the splash cams, people falling in. I will be hosting it along with fellow host Elisa Trosha, just like last year, and I believe the year before, a couple years before that. We always have a lot of fun with it. We do the play-by-play of all the activities for the Cardboard Boat Regatta. So you can write that down now, but do not worry. I'll be showing that to you a lot as we near the broadcast days. Okay. So Trump, here's the headlines. I've been talking and kind of prefacing this all morning. At 78, Trump 2 is showing signs of aging. Okay, so when you say 2, Trump 2, who else are you talking about there? Because I don't recall very much reporting about somebody else who was showing signs of aging. Yeah, a little bit recently, but not in the early days, not in the first, let's say 3 years? Donald Trump has made Joe Biden's advancing age one of his main campaign rallying points. Here's another example of Republicans pounce. Trump pounces. But the Republican former president is celebrating his 78th birthday today and also has shown signs of slowing down, both physically and mentally. And they go through what they believe are examples of this. And I've got to say, this is so hypocritical and so despicable that they will go through and show examples of this with Trump when they would never report on this about Biden. They're just using this as a way to attack Trump while under the guise of, he is saying Biden has issues. Let's go through his issues. Listen to this, too. Listen to this. As a head of state, Biden must take a litany of medical tests for transparency purposes. One of those is not a cognitive test, though. They failed to mention that. They kind of omit it. The detailed results are made public by the White House physician. In contrast, no information has been available in years about the health of Trump, who is known to be a fan of fast food. So let's think about this for a moment. You ignore the fact that Biden refuses to take a cognitive test. In the early days of Trump's administration, 2016, there was a demand for a cognitive test, which he took with flying colors. But now you have the audacity to question his health in this, or not being transparent with his health. He's a former president. He does not have to do that, number one. And that's not the issue here, point. But they go through and, again, mention all these things that show that he's aging, which are not that many. I mean, this is a typical Tuesday for Biden. And they mention this. Nothing about Biden in that either. So Trump, too, is showing signs of aging. So who's the other person? 2. What do you mean by 2? Expand on that. Well, Trump pounces on Biden's age. Or how about this one? This is from the Daily Beast, so it's from the far left. Take that with a grain of salt. Who will live longer, Trump or Biden? Is the headline. The next line, happy birthday, Donald. What a sickening, isn't it? And I don't want to go through all this because, again, it's from the Daily Beast. So while Vice President Harris and whoever Trump picks for his VP may think they are closer than ever to the Oval Office, they shouldn't start measuring the White House drapes too soon. And they go through the health issues there. Another example, and again, they like to put the number in the headline. Trump turns 78, a birthday he wishes doesn't exist, says CNN. We've got to take a break. All right? When we come back, we're going to wrap things up with more on this. Trump turning 78, and all of a sudden, the media cares about ages of a candidate, but we have to wrap things up. Last break of this hour. And we are back. Wrapping up, frankly speaking, a comment from a viewer with regard to the debate. After the cameras start rolling, I can see Mr. Trump turning the debate into a platform that favors him. What can the biased moderators do after the broadcast start? Pull the plug? I can't see that happening. Well, remember, they're having microphones set up where the moderators can cut off the microphone if you run long, if you start to talk back and forth. So yes, I'm not. They're not going to pull the plug on the debate, so I don't disagree with you there, but they can find a way to silence him, which will be, Mr. Trump, if you don't allow Biden to talk, or if you don't allow me to talk, we're going to cut off your mic, giving Biden more time for a scripted answer for something that he's prepared without any pushback. So I do think there's a lot of potential here for it to play into Trump's style. But I see after the town hall and some other issues where the media kind of turned on themselves for giving him any kind of quote unquote platform, I see a scenario where they're going to be quote unquote no nonsense, where we are not going to stand for this, Mr. Trump. President Biden gets 2 minutes to rebut what you just said in that 2 seconds that you went over. I don't think you're going to see a fair fight here. And I don't mean that I think Trump would have no problem defeating Biden in a debate. I know that. But I'm saying a fair fight in the sense of it'll be one hand tying behind his back. Here's a nice comment from a viewer. I participated in the cardboard regatta for many years, and I will attest to the fact that you won't be disappointed. Go and you will have a great time. I totally agree. And if you do, come over to Big Fox, say hi. It starts tomorrow. The whole fun starts from 11 a.m. till 7 p.m. At Seneca Harbor Park. But the cardboard boat regatta kicks off at 2 o'clock. And as I said, we'll be rebroadcasting it in a few weeks. So according to Stephen Collinson, before we go, just on this issue, Donald Trump got the perfect birthday present. Complete capitulation by the GOP. Because I guess because of a handshake. Listen to this again. The unbiased media. This coming from CNN, Stephen Collinson. The twice impeached 45th president and newly convicted criminal was back on Capitol Hill Thursday for the first time since his supporters beat up police officers and smashed their way through the U.S. Capitol on January 6th, 2021. Is there a better sentence written that is more cliche, more expected than that sentence from Stephen Collinson and the unbiased folks at CNN? That is the sentence that they dream of. I'm going to read it again, even though we're out of time. The twice impeached 45th president, okay, got the impeachment in there, newly convicted criminal. I am a little disappointed he didn't say felon. I've got to say you're slipping, Stephen. Was back on Capitol Hill. What does he mention next? Of course, January 6th. Also, later on in the article, he has, and he's starting to use this a little too much. I think he really likes this line. He thinks it's effective. Biden speaks of democracy abroad while Trump undermines it at home. He had an article like that during the anniversary of D-Day as well. That is it for today's edition of Frankly Speaking. Wow. We had so many other things to get to. Oh, as I mentioned, the VP race is on because you've got some insider, let's say, backstabbing of each candidate. Potential VP pick, Senator J.D. Vance once liked tweets harshly critical of Trump. This piggybacks off of the Tim Scott criticism yesterday. There's some people behind the scenes, meaning some of the candidates that are vying for it, turning on each other. I think Trump claims he has a pretty good idea of who his VP pick will be. Here's a headline that they love. Republican National Committee prepares for a convention Trump may not attend. All right. Trump making stunning inroads with young voters. Not seen in 24 years. These numbers have got to terrify Democrats. Young voters are leaning Republican as Democrats try to set themselves up as the cool thing. Are Lisa and I entering a boat in the regatta? No, absolutely not. I will be there helping the film, and then we will be hosts of the broadcast. That's as far as I'm not getting in that freezing cold water. But thank you to everybody who does, so we can all have a good time. Have a great weekend, everyone. Stay safe. Have fun, and we will be back Monday morning starting at 6 a.m. Thank you for another great show. Had a lot of fun this morning, and we will see you Monday morning at 6. I look forward to it already. Have a safe and fun weekend.